Fantastic opening. I said I'm doing No Shave November. We ribbed Twist for shaving on his entire body.
I'm doing No Shave November too, guys. Just so everybody knows. I'm deep in the midst of it.
Yeah. But no, thanks everybody for showing up for another fantastic episode of Old School Runecast. As always, this is probably the single most important event in human history, so you are very lucky that you are here. Today with me, as always, is the infamous RS Felon. That's at Josh Pillault.
Pleasure to be here. Good to see you guys.
Twitch. He's on Twitter. It's all under at Josh Pillault, at J Pillault. As always, up to my top right is Tiny Twist.
Yep.
He's been slaying it and twisted. And I am your host at Monkey Commando. Follow me on Twitter. I'm always posting something goofy. Posted.
Pointed the wrong way.
Yeah, I think it's backwards on the Discord.
Yeah, it is. It is. There is Twist.
Guys, so we make three kinds of videos here when it comes to our podcast. We do interviews, current events, and general thoughts. We've done current events, general thoughts a couple times. Today we're actually doing an interview, which is great. When I first created this podcast, before Josh said he wanted to be a part of it, I had a short list of people in the RS community I wanted to interview, and the RS Felon was actually one of them. And he said he wanted to be on the show.
That's an interesting coincidence.
Well, yeah, that was our first one. So today we're going to ask him some questions. If you guys have any questions you think of, if you're watching live right now, if you have any questions you think of that you would like me to ask Josh, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll be reading them towards the end of the show. I'll kind of keep an eye on them as we go. So Josh, the legendary RS Felon.
If it could be so called, yes.
And Twist, if you have any questions, you want to jump in and interrupt me, just go right on ahead, okay?
Sounds good.
One of the first questions I want to ask is, we all know a lot of things about you. One question I want to know is, I'm not going to ask you to dox yourself, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself that you don't put out on YouTube, other than the fact that you play RuneScape and you're an RS Felon?
Let me think. I'm a deeply spiritual guy. I don't talk about that too terribly much. I don't feel like it's my platform, I was not for a very long time. So at my core, even though I act like an asshole all the time, I like to be really sarcastic and pick on people and troll people. At my core, I'm all about positivity. I'm all about moving forward and using mistakes and hardships in your life to learn and to grow from them, Other than that, I really can't think of anything off the top of my head because pretty much all I am is like wife, baby, RuneScape music. I mean, that's really pretty much all that I do now, and I like to think that I'm very transparent with the community that I have and that we've built together. Pretty much anything that they ask, I'm all about it. Committed to sobriety at this point, going on 2 years. This upcoming January will be 2 years of stone cold sobriety,
cool.
Which has changed my life for the better. And anybody out there struggling with addiction, anybody that is in the chat or watching the YouTube video or listening or whatever it may be, I assure you life is better without having to depend on external sources for your joy. It's not always easy to find internal ones, but once you do, sobriety is possible for everybody. But that's pretty much my main summary, man. You get what you see, I guess.
Cool.
Most of the people watching, I think, are RuneScape players, so they're all struggling with addiction, most likely.
Yeah, they're struggling with a nice pixel and dopamine addiction. They're addicted to Dragon Warhammers and bludgeons and whatnot.
Right. I sort of have a follow-up question to that. Would you say that that this was sort of a change for you before or after you went to prison? Like, were you a spiritual person and did you have these similar, life guidelines before you went to prison, or was that something that changed? Okay, so something.
Yeah, it definitely occurred in prison, particularly whenever I had a spiritual moment that I neither wanted nor expected nor believed in. Actually happened the second time when I went back on probation violation. But before I got arrested, I was really, really one of those point the finger kind of guys. The man's trying to hold me down. It's society that's so messed up, man. I just need some help. I can't do it myself. I was really one of those blaming kind of guys. And couple that with a drug and drinking problem, and you're really not going to get much done. You're pretty much just going to be a drain on society, which is really what I was at the core. But I was very much a finger point kind of person. I was always, these people won't help me get ahead, and they don't want me to succeed, and the system's out to get you and all that. And when I was incarcerated, I realized that I'd had more opportunities than I knew what to do with, and I had never picked myself up by the bootstraps, and I decided I wasn't going to let anybody hold me back anymore. I wasn't going to let other people or any external forces dictate what I did with my life or what I could or could not do. And of course, meeting my wife had a major impact on that as well, because I finally had something bigger going on with my life. Even when we first got engaged, I knew it was time for me to sober up and get serious. Or I was going to run away the girl that I knew was my dream girl already. And even more so, the second time that I was in prison is actually whenever it really developed. No, beforehand, I was living like an absolute heathen. I was running around drinking and drugging and girling and all that, and not doing anything positive with my life or my time. It was a hard lesson to learn, but in the end, it was a lesson.
Right.
Right.
So I want to ask you, because we know you play guitar. Well, I've seen you play guitar. Just judging by the background of the videos I've seen, you're big into music. What are some of your favorite genres, musicians, artists?
My favorite genre of music is kind of a tie between pop punk music and grunge. As you can see, I got the grunge guide right there on my wall.
Right.
But my big four bands that I would say are the Beatles, Metallica, Blink-182, and Nirvana. And I understand that people get very, very offended whenever I say I put Blink-182 on that list with those other three bands. They get very upset. They're like, "Did you just put Blink's name next to Nirvana, the Beatles, and Metallica?" But before I went to prison, I was a heavy metal purist. Other than the Beatles and Blink, that was all I really listened to was like shred metal, melodic death metal, Black Dahlia Murder and stuff like that, and new metal, Korn and Slipknot. I was a Kyle, as I've mentioned many times. But yeah, man, grunge and pop punk are really where my heart's at, particularly grunge. I really fell in love with grunge in prison.
Yeah.
No matter how nasty and dirty they got with the guitars, all those songs could hold up with just a voice and an acoustic guitar, and I really loved that. I fell in love with melody and, just an acoustic guitar and a voice, because that's all that I had whenever I was in prison, was $50 acoustic guitar where the strings were like snapping off of it. But
oh, really? So you learned to play the guitar in prison, or did you play before?
I perfected the art, is what I like to say. I studied music theory when I was in there. I already played, but I only played shred metal, and I wasn't into melody. I didn't know anything about music theory or how to play the blues or anything, that had any emotion other than rage behind it. So, no, I got 10,000 times better, but I did already play when I got locked up. So once I was able to get to prison and actually get a guitar, my mindset improved greatly.
Okay. Now, Josh, I'm sure a majority of the people who watch our show probably know your story about how you went to prison, but can you give us maybe a quick, I hate to have you repeat the story you've told a billion times, but can you give us a minute rundown of how it went down? Just so people don't know will know. The
TLDR version?
Yeah.
I would have to say, October 4th of 2012, I was very, very drunk playing RuneScape. This is pre-OC, just weeks before it came out, as a matter of fact. I was planning on quitting the game at that time, but I was really drunk. A friend of mine were having a discussion. I would call it an argument, because he was trying to coerce me into downloading a video game called Super Columbine Massacre RPG, a video game that made fun and made light of a school shooting that happened in 1999. I was informing him that I did not want to. I did not think it was funny. I looked it up, found it offensive. The FBI made a big deal out of me looking it up later, even though we were counter-arguing as fast as we could that I did not download the game. I did not have it on my computer. That seemed like an important point to us, that it held up my story. But I was drunk, and I was a Kyle, and I made a terrible, terrible mistake, and it was a different time frame. 2012, this wasn't happening every week like it is now. But I said I wanted to pull a Columbine, is what I said. I said I wanted to go Columbine, look for my name on the news in 6 months. LOL, I'm from Oxford, Mississippi. The world's going to know my wrath, or something like that. 4 days later, the bomb squad, the FBI, the SWAT team showed up. They charged me with transmitting an interstate and foreign commerce, threats to kill and injure the person of another, and transmitting threats to destroy buildings by means of fire and explosives. And I was sentenced to 72 months in federal prison regarding a huge political agenda to try and look like they were stopping these things from happening. Now I'm a Twitch streamer. Woo!
Josh, I've known you for a while now. I can tell you're a very down-to-earth, very sincere guy. I personally couldn't imagine you hurting a fly, but for people who don't know you, why should they believe that, what you were saying wasn't serious?
Well, I think that personally, I feel like anybody that really takes the time to look at the facts of the case, not somebody that Googles my name, reads the case law file that the government wrote to block a motion of mine, and never put my motions on the internet, might I add. They only put theirs. I never understood why that is. Particularly where we beat them and proved that they were lying in motions that I submitted. But anybody that looks at the facts of the case, I had 3 mental evaluations. As a matter of fact, I was just looking over one the other day. That's a Federal Bureau of Prisons logo right there. 3 different doctors said that I was not a danger to society or to myself. The day that I said I was going to do it was a Saturday. I possessed nothing in my home indicative of any attack at all, except for I had downloaded the Anarchist Cookbook, which a lot of people have made a big hubbub about that. But the things in the Anarchist Cookbook that they found dangerous were how to make arsenic out of cherry pits and how to use an exercise bike to detonate a blasting cap. I'm not sure what that last one even is, but I assure you I was not planning any form of a mass poisoning. You would need several 18-wheelers full of cherries, I assume, to pull something like that off. So it was kind of irrelevant, in my opinion. There were just no means. There were no means to do it. Teachers from the school stood up for me. I can go on my Facebook right now and show people where teachers have commented in support of me, from the school that allegedly would have been threatened. My brother attended the school on that day, and my ex-girlfriends did testify against me. Everybody seems to know that. Everybody loves bringing that up. But I've already shown on my YouTube channel why they did what they did and how they were coerced into it, allegedly by the FBI. And point blank, there's just no reason to believe that I was serious, I said it, and it was a tasteless prank to get a reaction. And I've never claimed that I shouldn't have gotten in trouble. I understand that punishment needs to be due for something like that, particularly in these times. And people misunderstand it. They're like, this chump thinks he should have got away with saying that. And that's not ever been my position. My position is 6 years was overkill.
Yeah, I've heard the story before, but remind me again, how old were you?
19.
19? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I always talk about this with my friends. Like, if anyone saw the things that I was saying when I was 19 or 18 or 17, like around that age.
Yep.
I mean, the amount of dumb stuff that I've said that I probably should have gotten in trouble for, online on whether it be RuneScape or everyone always memes about Xbox 360 lobbies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of stuff people say and they get away with it. It's
shocking.
Yeah, exactly. It's just people on the internet just saying reckless things because for the most part, most people don't get in trouble for these things, and they want to push the boundaries because they're like an edgy 17 or 18-year-old, Right. So It doesn't surprise me at all that what the things that you said, being on the internet for how long I've been on the internet, it doesn't shock me.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't understand why people wouldn't believe you that you were kidding if they've ever spent any amount of time on the internet before, right? That's kind of what blows my mind, at least.
And that was the thing with the judges and the prosecutor. When I was arguing that I had never downloaded the video game that we were talking about, right. The judge actually let us win that point because his exact words were, I don't know what the term download or attempt to download means, but I don't find it to be relevant in this case, so I'll just let you win that objection. You can have that. And I'm like, oh, good. This is the guy that should be in charge of my life. He doesn't even know what download means. I mean, I thought they had that term since like 1987, but all right, hey, sure, why not?
Wow.
That's
crazy. Wow. Okay, I did not know that. That's crazy.
They raged whenever I said it was a different generation as well. I said on the stand, I said, this case is defined by a generation gap, and they all turned red in the face and got all pissed off. And I'm like, dude, I'm 20. At the time that I got sentenced, I was 21. I was like, I'm 21 years old. You guys are in your mid-50s to early 60s. If you have any doubts in your mind that we're parts of a different generation, then you are delusional and you are not fit to be in your position in the government. If you think that there's any chance that we're the same generation, I'm not calling you guys old, which you are. I'm just saying that we are different generations. It's as simple as that. I wasn't trying to imply that they were, old men, which they were. But I was just pointing out the fact that we're of different generations. I was born in 1992. These dudes were born in 1950, I mean,
right.
It's just, these dudes were middle-aged when I was born. It's just a different generation. So they didn't see it that way. They saw it as, we understand you kids and your hip lingos, and we believe you were being serious. And needless to say, between the 17 months of from my arrest to my sentencing, many tragedies happened in America. They went up like 7,000% or something like that. And by the time I got to sentencing, it was it was almost at crisis level. It was at like an epidemic of mass violence, and they had to look like they were doing something about it. Not to mention, a lot of people were asking why I was still in jail with no real evidence, and they dug in their heels and they said, we look stupid. We got to make it look like we did the right thing here.
Yeah.
I was a very naive guy, man. I always believed that bad people did bad things and went to prison because the cops were fighting to protect us and to help us, and that's not always the case. It's just not the reality. I'm not saying cops in general aren't out to help you, but in my particular case, there are bad ones that just want their agenda pushed, and that they want to save face and make them look a certain way. And unfortunately, I fell victim to that in a net that was a lot bigger than I would have guessed.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It seems to me, based on my knowledge of all the circumstances and stuff, it really was just them looking for a scapegoat or someone to basically point the finger at and say, like, hey, look, we got one. You know what I mean? Especially scapegoat. All the events surrounding the situation where they did screw up. They didn't want to have that situation happen again where they look like the dumb ones and like they're not doing their job. So they're like, hey, we
Exactly.
got one, you know, let's just
Look, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
We did
We're
it.
doing our job.
We're,
you know,
we're working on it. It's getting better. We're fixing this.
right. When it's really just some guy talking crap on the internet at the age of 19, you know.
I've heard myself referred to as the RuneScape goat.
Yeah.
Scape.
I was like, oh, I get it, scapegoat, because I play Scape. Ah, clever, the RuneScape goat.
Yeah.
Not the goat of RuneScape, but the RuneScape goat.
Yeah.
Josh, I actually have a question. My girlfriend wanted me to ask you this, so shout out to her. She wanted me to ask you, and I'll just ask this. If you need me to clarify, let me know. She wanted me to ask you, how do you get over that?
How do I get over the injustice of that happening to me?
Just how,
Basically, is
how
that
do
what
you
we
get
mean?
over that terrible, terrible experience where you lost 6 years plus of your life? How do you get over that?
No, I understand. I can say this much, man. For the first 2 years that I was actually in prison, I was going buck wild. I was doing drugs. I was getting in a lot of trouble. I was not keeping my nose out of any, stuff that wasn't my business. I didn't get in a gang or anything. I joined a car, which is the same thing, but you say we're a gang of people that don't want to be in a gang. And I was just up to general nonsensory. After about 2 years, when I had that realization that I had been blaming everybody else for everything, and keep in mind at this point now, it would look from an external standpoint that my life was officially ruined by the man, Now I'm a convicted felon that's also technically a convicted domestic terrorist, for the love of God. And that's what I realized, that this was only going to hold me back if I really let it, I knew I couldn't get the years back, but I could make the years that I did still have really count. And that's whenever I came to the conclusion that I had been blaming everybody else for everything. I used to say this stupid thing before I got locked up about how I couldn't get a job because I didn't have a car. I didn't have a car because I didn't have a job. So what was I supposed to do? I was leeching off on my girlfriend that I had at the time that was unfortunately enabling my addiction quite severely. And it's going to sound cliche, man, but I just had to let it go. It's as simple as that. Like I just said, you know what? I'm in this position. Moping about it's not going to help me. Blaming other people is not going to help me. Nothing that I do is going to help me except for me helping me. It really wasn't until I went back the second time that really solidified with me. And I was like, okay, I got up. And I had my opportunity that a lot of people would kill for. I mean, I knew dudes that were doing multiple life sentences. I get out of prison, smoke some weed, and go right back. Like I had my opportunity that many men would have literally killed me for just a chance to get out. And I immediately threw it away. That wasn't the FBI's fault. It wasn't the government's fault. The judge gave me a lot of time, but it still wasn't his fault that I smoked the weed in the first place. And, it was a real eye-opener for me. I was like, I had my chance, and nobody did that to me. I did that. I made the texts, and I made the calls, and I lit it up, and I'm the one that did that. And it was just kind of eye-opening for me, man, that all of my own decisions when I was just looking out for number one had always gotten me in trouble, and that it was time for me to consider other people, my fiance at that time, now wife and mother of my child. I honestly just had to let it go, dude. There was nothing else for it. I just had to say, you know what? I can't let this hold me back. My life will be miserable if I sit here and ruminate on this forever. I could sit here and gripe about it forever. And people also misinterpret the fact that I still do go on podcasts and that I still talk about it a lot and things like that. And they think that I'm trying to get my clout or trying to up myself or holding a grudge about it. Right. It's not about that. It's about the fact that they should not be allowed to do this because somebody else might have this happen to them and not come out of it as well as I did. Right. That's the thing about it. This legally should not have happened, and it should be prevented from happening to other people that might not come out on top. Main way for me to get over it was tell myself to get over it. I pretty much just told myself, quit crying, man. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get out there and do it. And then I got out and found out Twitch streaming was the thing, and I was like, well, that's built in for me. At this point, I got a backstory. I got the cool anime backstory now that I went to federal prison for talking trash on RuneScape. Might as well stream RuneScape.
Question. I don't know why I need to ask my questions. How are your memories of prison? By that I mean, do you remember it pretty clearly, or is it all kind of a haze? Or let me ask you this: how much of it do you remember, and how clearly is it in your mind when you think about it?
I think that overall, I would say that it was very, it's very clear, memories from prison and things like that. The time frames run together very badly because it's so many years, to where, like, I can't say that this happened at this time. Sometimes I can remember the season maybe, but I don't know if it was 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I'm not sure. I can sometimes tell vaguely by which prison I was in because I transferred around, or I didn't go to this prison until 2014. I was there till 2016, etc. But individual memories, friendships, band songs that we played and stuff like that, it's all crystal clear in my mind still. I mean, I just got off the phone. I just talked on the phone for 30 minutes the other day with my drummer from prison.
Oh, cool.
Really good friend of mine, Garfield. The memories are very, very clear. The time frames blur together a lot because you'd be amazed at how much the human mind is just geared towards adaptation. And before you know it, the days are really flying by. Before I knew it, I looked around and I'd been locked up for 4 years. I still remember the day that I got to exactly 19 months from my release. And I was like, I'm in the teens now. Oh my God, yes, I've only got 19 more months, dude. I'm almost done. And it's just crazy because your brain will go cope mode like that, So the time frames ran together, dude. After you've been locked up for a little while, it's like you wake up, dinner, sleep, wake up, dinner, sleep, wake up, dinner, sleep. I mean, it's just like shuffling through a book's pages, So individual aspects, interpersonal relationships that I had with my friends, songs I learned in the band room, songs that I wrote. I can still remember time frames that I wrote songs and sets of lyrics, almost like a taste of like the season that it was. I know that probably sounds weird.
It makes sense.
But individual, when did this happen? No clue, man. No clue. So it's kind of both is really honestly the best answer. It's like a yes and no kind of situation. I can't tell you when specifically something happened, but I can tell you exactly how it did happen.
Another question. Would you consider the time you spent in prison the most impactful thing? Okay, actually, start over. Would you consider the 6-7 years you spent in prison more impactful to the person you are today than the 19 years that preceded it, or not preceded it, or before it?
No doubt. No doubt. That entire situation is what made me who I am today. There's no doubt about it. I was not a positive-minded guy. I was not a you can always get out of any hole that you dig yourself into kind of guy. That was not my mindset at all. At the age of 19, I pretty much already thought that my life was flushed down the toilet, predominantly due to addiction problems, I was miserable and I was jaded and things weren't going right. So it's really unfortunate that the judge would thank himself if he ever saw me out in public with my wife and my beautiful baby girl, and the successes that I've had since. It's really a shame that he would think that he did the right thing because he did it from a place of hatred in his heart. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But no, it's definitely the most significant thing that's ever happened to me. And it loomed large in my life in other ways. If I wouldn't have gone to prison the first time, I wouldn't have been at the halfway house that I was at when I decided to go looking for a job from the halfway house and went to the mall where I met my wife, And now I've got a daughter and I'm married and I'm sober and I'm happy and stuff that I never thought would happen. All that is because I went to prison. It was a very strange coincidence the way that I met my wife. And had I not gone to prison, we wouldn't have crossed paths. So I guess it was just part of my plan, Do
you ever, envision a time in the future where going to prison isn't the most important thing that happened to you? Or I should say important, the most impactful thing that happened to you? Do you ever see a time in the future when you're like 60, 70, 80, and you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I went to prison, but it wasn't that big of a deal? Do you ever see yourself saying that?
Hard for me to say at this point, to be honest with you. I'm not totally positive. I can't imagine something being more impactful than that, especially because I spent my formative years there, from 19 till basically 26, if not 27. My 27th birthday was at a halfway house, and my 25th birthday was at a halfway house. Other than that, they've all been in prison since my 20th, and I'll be 28 in like 2 weeks. So I can't imagine anything like that because, being in prison taught me about trying to seek middle ground and compromise with people that you're having issues with. Right. It taught me about the unnecessary aspects of violence because I used to think it was so great to go fight people, And man, let me tell you, after a year in prison, I was so over that. I was like, God, unnecessary, pointless violence just for the sake of making yourself feel good and stroking your own ego is ridiculous. It just taught me more about life than I can picture life teaching me, if that makes sense. It's going to take a long, long time. But in that few years, it was really condensed human study combined with, what made this happen? Why did this tragedy occur? Why did these two dudes get into it and this guy got stabbed or whatever? How did this start? It pretty much all boiled down to ego every single time almost. That's whenever I was like, okay, so humble yourself. Don't walk around like you're a huge dickhead and you won't have as many problems with people. When you stop putting yourself over everybody else, other people feel less inclined to try and knock you back down off of that pedestal. So put yourself on the same level as everybody else that you would want to be cool with. And ta-da, that right there takes out a lot of, because let me tell you, putting 1,000 of the biggest Billy badasses on the planet Earth, one of them's right and the rest of them are wrong, and they all are out to prove it. So,
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, you were in prison around the time when I was in college, and to me, it sounds like you learned probably more meaningful lessons than I did at my time in college. So.
People say that a lot. They're like, man, you got a better education you would have in college. And I'm like, if I wanted to go get an actual job, I'd have to flip burgers. So maybe not,
I mean,
unless I was going to be like a self-help seminar guy or something. No, I'm not really certified anywhere.
Right. It's definitely a different type of learning, and I mean, college is probably the whole point of college, to me at least, is, hey, look, I have a piece of paper now that says I did it, so now I can get a job, right?
Even
It doesn't
if you already
mean
knew it
that
before.
exactly, right? So, but yeah, no, it's a different type of learning. And I was actually listening to another person talk about their sort of life experiences on a podcast this week, and they were talking about how they were a monk for a month. And
Interesting.
it kind of reminds me like a little bit similar to your situation, where all the other distractions in life, not saying that, I mean, this person gave this stuff up willingly and you didn't, so it's a different circumstance, but they were talking about the amount of self-reflection that they got to do, and the amount of just critical thinking and sort of, I mean, you have so much free time on your hands, right?
Exactly.
So, and you're not distracted by things like RuneScape or social media and that sort of stuff. But you do get to like learn a lot about like the human psyche and that kind of stuff, and the way you think about violence and that sort of thing. So it does seem like a somewhat similar situation where you do learn a lot about yourself.
Very much so.
Which is a great takeaway from it. Honestly, it's like sort of inspiring to hear that you had this situation that you were forced into, but you didn't at least just waste it completely, right? You took lessons away from it, and you learned what you could while you were in there. So
the way that I see it, I think that's a perfect parallel, because the way that I see it is, whether it's forced or not, like it was in my instance, I think that part of the reason that so many people get into so much violence, nonsense, drugs, and gangs and stuff like that when they're in prison is largely due to the simple fact that I say that there's two ways to go crazy in there. You can go crazy in your head, walking over all the mistakes that you made in your life, the things that you did wrong, what you would have done differently, or you can get crazy in the insanity that's around you. Most people choose the latter. This is not something I was inclined towards. So I was definitely more of the former. I was always thinking about, man, what if I would have done this, or if only I'd have done this, or I threw this away, or what if I could have just gone back and not said it, or something like that. If only I had Cosmo and Wanda here, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, you know. But at the end of the day, all of that was nothing but self-reflection, just like you just said that the monk had. You know, it was self-reflection, and that's what made me realize every time that I went back and I had a big qualm in my life with something that went wrong and I ended up suffering because of it, was because of me, you know. Nobody was out to get me the way that I had really been thinking. And I had this self-reflection, this time away from things, you know, where I was locked in a cell every single night from 9:30 at night until 6 in the morning when they unlocked the door, to sit there and go, oh, man, you know what? That wasn't her fault. That was my fault. Well, she did this to me. Yeah, but because I did this, and then that led to this. But first, because she did it, yeah, but then that's because I did this. And then I started realizing that pretty much every major mistake in my life was sitting squarely on my shoulders, you know. I can see that being a very, very similar thing. I've quoted a lot of times Malcolm X's autobiography, which I read 3 times while I was locked up. He did 7 years in prison for a crime that carries an average of 1. And he said, turn your cell into your school and your monastery. And that was something that I took very seriously, despite the fact that I was a non-spiritual person. I knew what he meant by it. And so, I mean, I was a monk, man. I mean, pretty much a perfect parallel, you know. That's the way that I looked at it. I took the time to try and educate myself and get right internally. And unfortunately, not a lot of guys do that. I'm sad to say.
Yeah, I definitely think it takes a certain type of person to, I mean, accept the fact that it's like, it's not just the world out to get them that they're there, right? I mean, they did play some part into it. How much of that part is up to each specific situation, but just accepting the fact that you are here and making the most out of it, it definitely takes, I don't think everyone's capable of doing that, right? I mean, you'd see a lot more.
They don't show it.
Right, yeah. So,
yeah. Well, I was going to say, if you're listening, you want to hear more about Josh's story in prison. He's got actually 2 great videos he released. He released those 2 videos. That's when I first saw you, where you kind of explained and gave the rundown. I'll link those in the description below. Definitely watch those. They're great, absolutely great. I want to ask you some questions, kind of move away from that subject a little bit, because I'm sure you get asked a billion questions every single day of your life. I don't mind questions about RuneScape a little bit, and then we'll move on to some deeper life questions. We talk about RuneScape a lot, but I never really get to ask you, like, point blank. So I'm going to ask you, for starters, what's your favorite skill, Josh, in RuneScape? Slayer?
Slayer, all the way. Favorite skill by a long shot.
Okay, other than...
Oh, no, other than Slayer?
Say
there's
Slayer.
other skills?
Other than Slayer. Okay, wait, other than Slayer and What's the other big one that everybody loves? I can't believe I'm pulling a blank.
Agility, man. Of course, no.
Yeah, other than Slayer. Get back to this. What's your favorite skilling skill in the game? That's a better question. Like pure skilling skill.
Oh man, I don't know. That's a tough one, man. I feel like there's two different ways to look at it. There's either enjoyableness of it, particularly because I play an Iron Man now, so I'll look at it like this instead. There's either enjoyableness of it or utility of it is the way that I see it, you know? Like, for example, construction I don't find to be the most enjoyable thing to train, but it is quite possibly the single most useful skill, you know, to train, and that's for all accounts, in my opinion, whether you're an Iron Man or not. Me being an Iron Man, herb lore, of course, that's a utility one, not a fun one when I'm telegrabbing wines of Zammy, because I don't want to go to the Tide Farm and get my own Zammy grapes. Man, I really actually, and I know you're gonna love this, Monkey. I actually always enjoyed woodcutting. I found it pretty relaxing, you know, relatively AFK. So if I'm going as far as enjoyment and like what doesn't make me want to tear my eyeballs out, I would have to say woodcutting. Much less click intensive than mining because of the, you know, resource depletion. And you get to watch all those logs stack up in your bank. So even though it's not great money, especially now that I'm an Iron Man, seeing a huge stack of logs, oh god, makes my mouth water. Oh god. If not for fletching, then for fire making, because I don't do cheater toad. I'd have to say probably woodcutting, man.
Nice.
I don't really enjoy mining, even though it's how I start my new Iron Man all the time. Now that I'm on my like fourth one, I do mining and smithing for early money. Sell it to the sword shop at Varrock. But yeah, if it ain't Slayer, man, I ain't down with it.
If you could make one change to Old School RuneScape, and when you answer this, don't think about if it's balanced, if it's good for the economy, if it can be botted, gold farmed, whatever. If none of that was an issue, if you could make one change or one addition or whatever to RuneScape, what would it be?
That's a tough one, man. I was joking and saying Winter Toad every couple words there, but if I could honestly and truly change one thing about the current state of Old School RuneScape,
yeah, anything.
There's so many cliches that I could go with. Something as simple as like nerf the duel arena or something like that, but I don't feel like that's like one of the most pressing things in the game.
What's like a dream piece of content for you? Just like you would just absolutely love it. Love to do it.
I never really did Soul Wars or Stealing Creation back then, so it's not like I'm uber hyped about them reincorporating that. As long as they don't have those broken rewards, I don't really care. As long as, you know, people enjoy it. The dream piece of content. I personally think that more old style bosses, particularly for mid levels, I think would be awesome. I feel like that's something that's really slept on because they did it with the Nightmare because so many people asked about it, of course, which has very small requirements. But like the old fashioned bosses, man, like King Black Dragon, you know, and like Cowfight Queen, they're not bosses that you necessarily have to have a Slayer level or you force solo. You know, you can just find them on the map, go to them with your homies, and go do them. And I think that was a lot of fun, you know. God Wars Dungeon is a great instance of that as well, which I think is enjoyable for most people in the game, except for getting crashed if you're an Iron Man trying to do bandos or something. But yeah, I wish that they would incorporate more bosses that were just like group bosses where you could just go do them, preferably mid-level. I don't think mid-levels really have a lot to get them into bossing except for maybe the mole. And I guess if you could count Cheater Toad, I guess that's supposed to be like a skilling boss or whatever. I think that more mid-level bosses with no Slayer requirement would be awesome. And you know I'm all about Slayer now, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that's an area where it's lacking. I was really happy that they incorporated Obor and Bryophyta as well. I thought that was really cool that they did that for free-to-play. You know, brought in some bossing for free-to-play, even if it's relatively minor. Still good drops, you know, gives you a good taste for it. There's some mechanics. You got to kill the little root spawns with Bryophyta. I've actually never killed Obor, but I've killed Bryophyta a lot. And yeah, I would go for more mid-level open-world bosses, man. I've always loved that concept. I remember when I was a kid just being enamored by the fact that there were just some, like, hella high-level monsters just somewhere on the map, you know? I didn't have to go to a special place and have a Slayer task to do it. You just went there, you know, and your homies would be like, do you know where the King Black Dragon is? It's over there where you get the Boots of Lightness before they moved it, you know? And I just thought it was fascinating, man, that there were just these monsters lurking around the game that were just insanely powerful with these really rare drops like the multi-million coin chain body. As if I would have ever done Cowfight Queen back in the day. That bitch hits constant 30s. But I would like to see a lot more bosses, man. I know that sounds stupid because I'm a PVMer like that. No, but mid-level bosses without Slayer requirements where you just show up with your homies and throw down. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Mid-level is kind of bare for bossing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than like Barrows and what you brought up earlier.
Oh God, let's not say Barrows, please. 200 chests. I haven't gotten a unique.
Oh my!
Jeez.
What? No way. With 5?
I've gotten dupes.
Okay.
But I'm about 200 chests now without getting an item that was new to me. And I need one item to complete every single set except for Carol's. Like, I'll just need one drop here, one drop there. Do Gutham's plate skirts exist? Tell me in the chat, guys. Do Gutham's plate skirts exist? Because I'm quite convinced that they don't. If I had that, oh, my Slayer would be so much better. So much less Karambwans, or however you pronounce it, would be utilized.
My first 2 Barrows pieces were Guthan's top and bottom. I did 100 Barrows chests, and I was like, all right, I'm not going for all the sets. I think this is enough for me.
You burnt your RNG out early?
No, not that. I just, for me personally, in my goals on my Iron Man, I just didn't see the point of completing all the sets. So
I just want Guthans.
Yeah,
Derek's would be cool or whatever, but I really just want Guthans. I would like Carol's top and bottom for the mage defense and Guthans for healing. All I need is a stupid Guthan skirt, and I'm good. Derek's helmet would finish that for me. Varrock's skirt would finish that for me. I've finished Torag's twice. Mm-hmm. All right, Torag's. That's the one that gets people hyped.
Torag's it. Buff Torag hammers. I'm gonna say it. That's my competition.
Buff Torag's hammers.
That's
not a hot take. That's a popular take. At least let them hit twice. You swing them like this. My God.
I kind of want to move away from RuneScape because Josh is on our show all the time and he's always talking about RuneScape and he's always got some great opinions. I want to ask you some questions because I want to kind of deep dive into your mind a little bit here, my dude. You seem like a very opinionated person, which is one of the reasons I like you so much. You're very opinionated, and you got great at everything. So I have some questions I like to ask myself. I want to ask you. Maybe kind of hopefully don't find them edgy, but I'm gonna ask you. First question: do you believe in free will or destiny and determinism?
A lot of these, my answer is going to be yin yang. I feel like it's a pretty struck balance of both. Particularly because of my spiritual experience that I had. Like I said, I don't typically go into great detail about it. I just feel like at this point, it's really going to alienate more people than it would, attract. And I'd rather just live by example, I guess. I do personally believe that everything that happens in your life is a lesson. I do believe that, even whenever I was a Buddhist, a non-theist Buddhist, that was one of the big lessons they taught you, is that every single thing that happens in your day-to-day life is a lesson. Doesn't necessarily mean it's, even something as simple as dropping your keys before you walk out of the door. There's a lesson to learn from it, if you just stop and think about things. And, something that seems like the worst thing that ever happened to you, like losing a child, in the long run is going to make you stronger and better and more what you were meant to be. But I do believe that free will is the standpoint of all of this. You have the free will to stop. You have the free will to change these decisions. You have the free will to run away from things that are good for you or embrace the things that are bad. And nothing and no one is going to stop you from doing that. But in the end, what does happen, I believe it's destined to make you into a better person. So I don't really have exactly a straight answer for that. I was really into philosophy when I was locked up. So a lot of times if you ask me a philosophical question, my answer is yes and no.
Well,
like the Rivendell elf and the Hobbit.
Answer, I always kind of believe the quick answer is it's complicated. But I like to know your thoughts because you have a very interesting, very, very interesting life experience.
I kind of see both as the answer there, to be honest with you. But if there is one that has to prevail, it would be free will, yes. If I had to pick one, I would say that free will is the real law. And it's kind of what makes a lot of spiritual things and entities make sense whenever you look at philosophical debate, But at the end of the day, I do believe that there's a good chunk of destiny involved. I mean, look at how I met my wife, for the love of God.
Yeah. One of the classic questions, you've all seen the memes. You're on the rail, okay? Of course, classic. You can pull the train, it kills 3 people, or you don't pull the lever. Excuse me. I swapped it here. If you don't pull the lever, it kills 3 people. If you pull the lever, it kills only 1 person. With the classic train meme. I can't explain it very well. I don't know why. But you know what I'm talking about. Do you pull the lever or do you not? Do you kill 3 people or do you kill the 1 person?
I mean, I guess I would have to go with 1, man. I mean, if it comes down to those two options, am I allowed to go over there and push them off the track? If I have to choose between 1 and 3, man, I guess I'm gonna have to go with 1. The less amount of damage. If not to sound too cold and logical about it, but I mean, if it's 1 person versus 3, I guess I'm gonna have to go with the 1. Who would pick 3? Just out of curiosity, what's the logic here?
Well, actually, I was gonna say, I think the real point of it is that a travesty is going to happen. If you pull the lever, the travesty happens because of your decision. You're choosing to kill that 1 person. So it's do you let 3 people die, or do you live with the guilt that you killed one person? You know what I mean? That's kind of the thing. Like, what's, where does guilt come from, and does it come from your actions or your inactions? Which is the stronger guilt? So,
I mean, I kind of feel like that's what we talked about last time, where I said that, being complicit in something is essentially the same thing as doing it. So I mean, if you know that you have the free will to go over there and move that damn thing, and you decide not to, I think you're just as guilty of killing the 3 people as you would be if you pulled it and killed the one guy. Is the way that I see it.
I think it really comes down to people who would think that inaction is not inaction, so they think by not doing anything, none of this is my fault. Where,
right.
Certainly.
I mean, I think most people would probably argue that doing nothing is still doing something. It's still a choice that you're making, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
It's people wanting to remove themselves from the situation who would not choose to pull the lever. I think absolutely probably what it is.
I hate to say it, but that one guy would be getting smoked. Just got to look at the sheer numbers in this case.
How did these people get there, right? How did these people get on the tracks?
Who was Buzz Lightyear's enemy, Zur, or whatever? He put him there. Just some evil villain. Tied him up and strapped him down.
Right.
The incarnate of pure evil. I want to ask you a question from one of my absolute favorite thought experiments. I think it's really interesting for you to hear. So, okay, have you ever heard of the tale of Mary in the black and white room? You ever heard that?
I don't believe so, no.
So there's a scientist, her name was Mary, and her entire life she has lived in a room that is only black and white. It is fully devoid of colors. She's never seen a color in her entire life. But Mary is an expert on colors. She knows everything there is to know about colors. She knows how it interacts with the eyeball, how it affects your brain, what color everything is. She knows everything scientifically there is to know about colors. One day, her computer malfunctions, and she is shown the color blue. Does Mary have a reaction to that or not? Or does,
I would like to think so. I would like to think it would probably be a deeply emotional experience, like when you see people put on the, the colorblind glasses that help with certain shades of colorblindness.
Right.
I mean, if she's scientifically aware of it, she should recognize it when it comes, is the way that I would personally see it. This is one of those ones where I feel like there's probably not like a correct answer, kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, But I would like to think so. I would like to think that she'd be like, oh, that is beautiful, That's the way that I like to see it. I hope she would be stunned by it and say, this is gorgeous. This is exactly what I was always looking for. I feel almost like that's a metaphor for certain spiritual things, honestly, in my opinion. When you study it and you don't ever actually see it, but that way, when it does finally happen, you recognize it for what it is,
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I would like to think that she would have a beautiful, beautiful response to that, a lovely relationship with this color blue.
That experiences are more than just... that an experience is more than just the sum of its parts kind of thing. Certainly,
yeah. There's a difference between clinically knowing something and experiencing it, in my opinion. That's another thing that I feel like that really, really ties into what happened with me spiritually. There's clinically knowing something, and then there's seeing it with your own eyes and experiencing it, and it's 2 totally different things.
Mary sounds like most people arguing on the internet to me, right?
I've never seen it, but I know all about it.
An expert on what they're arguing about, but never experienced it themselves.
Never experienced it themselves, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. This reminds me. There's that quote. I'm not sure who it's from, but it's what's the difference between a robot and a human? The answer is experience. So that's kind of where that question comes from. Is the experience is worth more than the sum of its parts?
But can they download the experience?
Can they download the experience?
Right. That's the questions here.
Josh, would you consider yourself it's probably a stupid question, but I have it written down, so I'm going to ask you it. Would you consider yourself still a very self-reflective person, or have you kind of moved past that?
No, I think it's very important to living an honorable life, in my opinion, is to be aware of your actions, how they affect other people, and how to take responsibility and own up for things whenever you do screw up. Because we all screw up, we're human, but we all hate to admit it because we're human. But I think that self-reflection is really important for living a good, balanced life, I'm real big on balance and the yin-yang, all things in moderation, except for moderation. You need plenty of that.
How do you balance, taking responsibility for your actions, but also not being too harsh on yourself? Do you ever have that challenge?
That's a tricky one, man, but I believe that the big key to that is to try and look at your biases, look at the way that you were thinking and through what lens, and then try to remove that lens. Why did I react like this? Because I was seeing it this way. I was actually, believe it or not, in a drug program in prison where they tried to teach you a lot of this stuff. And even though everybody laughed at it and shook it off, there was some really, really good knowledge in there. Like some straight up clinical stuff about the way that you feel and how you react to things. And they said that you need to do what's called a camera check. Instead of looking at this situation or this experience or whatever through your bias and through your lens and the way that you want to see it with your past experiences being added up, pretend that you're looking at a picture of this situation that somebody you never met took, you know? It's a camera check. Remove yourself from the situation, see it from a third person perspective, and then make up your mind about whether or not you were still in the right. Don't say, oh, I'm, accusing my girl of cheating because she didn't answer my text for 2 minutes and I got cheated on in the past. That's your biases making you see it that way. That's not the camera check reality situation. The reality situation, she might be in line at the grocery store. She might be at a drive-thru, She could be asleep. There's no telling. But because of your biases and because of your past, you're not being partial, and then you immediately react in a way that is, inherent to who you think you are, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. I actually had a situation this week happen with me, and it was like a fight amongst family members, and some family members were sort of like being very blunt with the other family members, and they got all upset about it. And it was a lot easier for me to realize like the things that I am probably doing wrong in my own life when I was not a part of the situation, right? But I could easily picture myself on either side of either side of the argument there, and just looking at things that I've done in the past. And it was a lot easier for me to be like, wow, I do that sort of stuff sometimes. But since I'm not a part of this sort of argument, it's a lot easier for me to realize who's doing what wrong in this situation, and sort of learn from that, because I have no dog
in the fight. You're not on the offensive or the defensive. You're seeing it externally.
Exactly. And seeing it externally it's so much easier to learn from, because I mean, when you're in the middle of it and you don't take yourself out of it and look at it from that sort of camera view, I mean, you're just protecting your own ego, usually.
Absolutely. That's almost always what it is, man. It comes down to ego. Right. I would believe that it's necessary sometimes for people to be blunt with you. You've been acting like an ass. We all do it. We're all human. But sometimes somebody's got to, grab themselves by the nuts and say, look, man, you're not doing this right. You're not approaching this correctly. And somebody, most of the time, somebody needs to own up and say, you're right, I was looking at that wrong. I think it's really, really important to be able to say I was wrong, I reacted to this incorrectly, and have a discussion, hopefully, with the person that is, accusing you about these biases. And, and I definitely think that the person on the offensive that's pointing it out shouldn't be all aggressive about it either. There's ways to approach people as well. This is, once again, a balance issue here. But I know that I can talk to my wife about anything, for example. If she's saying something that's like hurting my feelings or whatever, I don't have to say, you always do this and you need to stop that or anything. I can say, hey, look, I don't really appreciate it whenever you say that. I know you're kidding or whatever, but it kind of hurts my feelings or something. And she'll say, oh, okay, I didn't realize I was doing that. It's as simple as that, but people always want to, well, I was just messing with you, and get all pissed about it. No introspection at all.
Right.
Introspection goes a long way. Introspection, balance, and trying to see both sides of things made my life a lot better.
So it sounds like to me you don't see most of the world in black and white. Would you say that?
Definitely not. I think black and white almost doesn't exist as far as morals and values and things like that go. I think pretty much we're all just a ball of gray area for all intents and purposes. I don't think anybody's inherently good. I don't think anybody's inherently bad. And I think that we all have our gray areas. We reach different zones and places. And that's about it. I mean, that's what I think is a big problem in America right now with this polarization of politics and stuff, is nobody's trying to see each other's side. Nobody's trying to reach across the aisle, and come together and say, okay, you're saying this super extreme, which extremes are never good. Left side saying this super extreme. Extremes are never good. Let's try and find a fair compromise in the middle here. It doesn't have to be doors open or doors shut. We can have, an unlocked door of sorts. Nobody tries to do that. Nobody tries to reach across the aisle. Everybody's trying to further their agenda. And look how violent politics has gotten since I was gone. When I went away, there was a lot of moderate stuff going on. Like, well, we want this, but you want this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the best of both, put them together, and see how that works. That doesn't happen anymore. That's just not a thing anymore. And gray areas are where it's at, man. A yin yang is equally black and white. It's gray,
Do you think there's ever a point like for where someone wrongs you where you don't give them grace anymore and it becomes a black and white thing if you just cut them out of your life, or is there always room for grace, you think? grace and
There are a lot of
forgiveness.
people that are never going to see gray areas. There are a lot of people that are never going to compromise. There are a lot of people who take pride in being all the way black or all the way white and don't want to compromise and are totally justified in their own mind for the way that they see it. That's why you really have to learn to pick your battles when you're in prison, is because, you try to go up to one of these young knuckleheads that, is out there. I heard a song recently where the lyrics are, walk up in the club like F everybody but me. And that F everybody but me is the mindset of so many people. It's a very dangerous mindset. How are you going to walk up to some knucklehead kid that his pride is how little he cares about anything and say, look, man, you dealt with that the wrong way. You hurt that guy's feelings. He's going to laugh in your face. He's going to say, good. He needs to toughen up. There's some people that I don't necessarily think that there are people that are truly deeply irredeemable, but I think there are people that aren't going to be ready yet to meet you in the middle or to meet others in the middle, and at that point, cut them out of your life until further notice. I don't think that anybody should be given up on. Nobody's irredeemable. Nobody's so far left or right that they just can't come back and start seeing compromise, seeing both sides. But I do believe that there's a lot of room for you to remove people from your life if they're too far to one side and it's causing you some imbalance, Largely comes down to ego, once again.
Okay.
I learned that whenever I was a Buddhist. They were like, everything that sucks is because of ego. Basically, you don't have enough water. That guy's got water. He's not sharing it with you. Why? Because F you. That's why. Because he wants water. Because he's got water and he's got a family and he doesn't care if you need some water. He doesn't care. It's his ego, It is what it is, man.
Yeah, it seems a lot of your life philosophy is kind of resolved around ego and self-reflection and understanding others' sense of self as well.
No doubt. It's very, very important. I try to tip well. I try to share. Makes me feel good, man. I like tipping people, It makes me feel good. I've worked for tips before where you're getting paid less than minimum wage and hoping for tips, and those tips will help you get by, make your day a little bit, show a little appreciation. You're just spreading the positivity, man. I'm not crippling myself. I'm not crippling myself to give this guy a $2 tip, and maybe he's having trouble making ends meet. Just little stuff like that, man. I put my damn buggy up whenever we're in the Walmart parking lot. We unload the groceries. It's just like little stuff that you can do, man, that just is taking a little extra away from yourself to give to the greater good. It's a very satisfying feeling, in my opinion. I think a lot more people need to experience that.
Have you read any like literature or listened to any podcasts or shows that kind of I don't know how to say this, either led you or like one of the things that you, let me ask you this, if you wanted somebody to kind of think the way you would, do you have any like literature or podcasts you'd recommend to people to read or to listen to? Or to movies like that?
I am no longer what I once was. For 5 years, I was a practicing Buddhist. The big realization of this for me largely came from the book, The Story of Buddhism, A Concise History to Its Teachings by Donald Lopez Sr. One of the most important books that I ever read. During a very intense experience that I had with some illicit substances a few months before I got arrested, I'd already experienced something very close to this, what's known in that community as ego death. Buddhists call it seeing emptiness. It's like 30 years worth of meditation. They can finally see this, where I had ceased to be able to discern myself from any other human being.
Right.
And I called it a really bad trip for a long time is what I called it. I was like, man, I freaked out and totally lost it there. And it changed the way that I saw everything. Like I was like walking around like this for 2 days, I'm not trying to harp too much about this experience, but when I started reading this book about Buddhism, it completely described exactly what I felt that day about the fact that seeing another human being as being any different than you are, when we all just came from the same matter and the same primordial ooze, the same stars and the same God, whatever you want to call it, it's just an illusion. It's just your ego trying to put you and this blob of meat over that blob of meat. And it sounds crazy. I know, man, it sounds a little out there right now, but it is the Buddhist philosophy that everybody is you, and the best thing that you can do for yourself is be good to all people. They call it selfish selflessness, where you're like, okay, I've only got $5 and this guy's homeless, but I know that I'll get the karma back and I'll make my life better by being selfless. So it's selfish selflessness, or vice versa, selfish selfishness. But that book right there will give you a large insight into where morals and lines come from, where they should be drawn, why they are the way they are, and why ego is the death of the planet Earth. Because ego and narcissism is the opposite of unity, and unity is where it's at.
That's awesome.
So I would recommend that book, absolutely. I think that book was the huge groundbreaker for me, especially because with Buddhism, they deal with reincarnations, and they were like, this is how you need to treat everybody. A good Buddhist, when he meets a new person, the first thing he thinks is, this used to be my mama. It's the very first thing that he thinks, and he will treat them as such.
I think that's a good life philosophy to live by, you know. Just
It did not cause me any problems, man. And I was in prison when I had this big awakening, you know, when I started practicing and stuff like that. I was in prison, and it led to all around a better experience for me, you know. It led to less confrontations, more overall joy, a more sense of comfort in my terrible, terrible surroundings, and deeper friendships, you know. When you stop viewing everybody as, you know, somebody that has to be beaten or overcome to put yourself on top of them, life just gets easier, man. You know, we can all spread the joy. We can all be happy together. I don't have to hog everything for me.
I dig it.
Thanks to that mindset, I'm paying the bills. The lights are on right now for me to be on this internet call with you guys. You know, it's because people spread love to me that are in my Twitch community, you know, and the best thing that I can do is give them positivity and love and, you know, support them in my chat and stuff like that and give them content and keep a positive message and stuff. And they, you know, if they're not hurting for it, they spread the love to me. And now look, we're all happier.
Yeah, I love the communities. Yeah. I just love what you say about being self-aware and trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and trying to understand that everything's not as black and white as one might think it is. It is difficult. Everybody struggles with it. Even the best struggle with it, but it is possible.
Buddhism says you're stuck in the illusion, man. That's what it is. When you're putting yourself above others and you're looking straight up at black or straight up white, you know, you're just looking at the illusion, man. You're falling for it. That's all it is. You're just falling for it, and it's to be expected. It's not saying it's a bad thing. They say it right there in the book. Like, it happens to all of us, dude. We're human. That's the whole point. Is for us to try and lean to the left or the right or the black or the white or whatever it is. And we all need to be gray area. Strike that balance. You all come together. We're all gray. We're all happy.
Right. And it's a constant battle, right? It's not like, oh, I've achieved this now. I have removed this filter or this blurriness in my vision and my bias forever. It's something that you constantly need to be working on.
It's a struggle every day.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe part of the reason why I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe why you have moved away from Buddhism is I feel like a lot of the times people, when they go through situations and they learn a lesson, well, they think, oh, well, this is how it is now forever. And this is the truth because this has influenced me positively. But I think part of a great way to live is to constantly be learning and seeking out new things. And I think that you're sort of someone who definitely does that, from what it seems, at least on my end. It seems like you are someone who's looking to constantly be learning, and I don't know. I think that's a great thing to have.
That honestly, and the irony of it is that not only are you correct, but that same Buddhist book, the day that you believe you are perfect is the day that you stop improving.
Right.
So all I got to tell myself every single day, I'm still learning, man. I'm not perfect. I got a long way to go. Things can change. My mindset can change. Keep an open mind and move forward.
Right. I think it's was it like Socrates? He basically thought he was a genius because he thought that because he was willing to admit to himself that he knew nothing. Essentially,
the wisest man knows that he knows nothing. Socrates.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So
his genius wasn't admitting that he was basically ignorant. You know.
Right. Well, while I don't think Socrates was the most humble person, no. I do think there's valuable that's a valuable lesson to learn. Is the more you realize that you don't know stuff, is the more you're going to improve, right? Because the more you're going to be seeking out information and continuing to better yourself.
Same exact concept. And he was more of a do as I say, not as I do kind of guy. Another important philosophical book that I read was actually by a Cynic, Seneca the Younger. He was a Roman philosopher around 4 BC or so. And he was big into philosophy and stuff like that, that cynicism goes quite well with Buddhism, you know, or if done properly, most mainstream religions and spiritualities honestly are quite compatible with it. But he said a roof of gold and a roof of thatch will serve the exact same purpose. Now, granted, he was literally one of the richest men in the history of the world who had miles and miles of gardens full of exotic creatures that could barely live there. But it was still the right point that he was making, you know? And I've lived that way my whole life, dude. People used to always be like, especially whenever I was a skater, my shoes get all torn up. They'd be like, man, get you some new shoes. My feet aren't touching the ground or the skateboard. I mean, it serves the same purpose as a brand new pair of shoes. I don't really care, man. You know, oh, man, that shirt looks stupid. I don't care. It's a shirt. It's protecting me from the elements and covering me up a little bit. I don't really care. You know, it's kind of the same thing, man. Material possessions and stuff like that just aren't as important as I thought they once were. What's important is, you know, interpersonal relationships, friendship and love conquer all. And to balance that out, I make sure that I troll a lot on the internet, especially on Overwatch. Probably got banned again on Overwatch last night, by the way, but we'll see.
It's Dan, Josh. As we're wrapping up the stream here, I wanted to ask you one final question, but I think you've already pretty much answered it. But I'm gonna ask you it anyways. If you could lead a lecture to the entire human population and everybody could perfectly understand it, what is like the one concept you would teach everyone?
Love, my guy. I know that sounds corny, bro, but let love lead, as Lenny Kravitz said. Love each other, love your neighbor, love your family, uplift each other. Don't try and get over on each other. If you make a promise to somebody, you make an agreement, don't try and rip them off, man. If everybody just keeps their word, the world's a better place, Work together, seek to overcome obstacles, and it all falls under the umbrella of what I would say love is, Love for each other, love for yourself, love for your spirituality, your religion, if you have that, whatever it may be, just love, man, because that is the force that I learned while I was incarcerated that will conquer everything and get you through absolutely any tragedy that you face in any circumstances. When you go against it and you start practicing hate, that's when things start to fall apart.
What would you define
except the unity of love
when you say it like that? When you're practicing hate, what exactly do you mean by that?
In this case, the way I was referring to it then, I would probably refer to that as a massive ego, putting it over yourself. I remember seeing a study one time where they were commenting on the fact that, let's say that you're in the desert with a crowd of people and there's, 1 gallon of water. And you might only need a half a gallon of water. Or let's say you only need a quarter of a gallon of water and you're good for a couple hours. You're good to survive through the rest of the desert. Whoever gets that water first is probably going to keep it all. They're going to keep that. They're going to take more than they need because they can, because they got there first and it's theirs and they want it. And maybe I'll need some later, And if there's a limited supply of something, humans tend to take much more than they need. It's just it's a trend that baffled them. But at the same time, if somebody falls in front of a train and you got 10 seconds, you're probably going to do everything in your power to go pick that person up. So it's like this weird paradox, of how we look out for each other. But at the same time, if it comes down to the real nitty gritty, they're going to be like, screw you. I could say this much. I would drink how much water I needed, and then I would pass that bottle to the closest person to me. Hatred I would just view as putting yourself over others to the detriment of others. It doesn't necessarily have to be something like attacking a random person who disagrees with your beliefs. It can be something as simple as, if you're the owner of a corporation, you're ripping off all your employees and they're barely able to make ends meet. You're not practicing proper love right there, man. You're making enough profit, man. You're making $2.6 million a year. You can let it trickle down a little bit, man. We all eat. We all get the bread. You know what I'm saying? It's just as simple as that. I think the hate is just anything that goes against the unity and the love of all people being able to get along. I mean, I used to say this. I actually had a debate about this when I was in prison. The way that I'm talking, it basically sounds like communism. Because in my opinion, on paper, communism's great. In practice, it's horrible. It cannot actually work. It's not going to work like that, and it never will. It's a terrible, terrible idea. In theory, it's lovely. In theory, it's worked a lot of times in many places around the world. Is it actually going to work that way? No, never. Absolutely not. Because we all have ego. We all look out for number one when it comes down to the nitty-gritty. But in theory, it's a lovely thought. So live your life as if you're communal with all people around you, Hey, man, I saw your car's out of gas, and you look a little hard out. I got a gallon in my garage, bro. You want it? Maybe he's not going to whip out his wallet and give you $10 or whatever. You'll get it. He'll pay it forward. You'll pay it back. You'll get it back some way, Just live in harmony, man. It's not that damn hard. I promise you it's not that hard. Everybody thinks it's so difficult. But I would just say hate, just define it as putting oneself over the benefit of other people.
Cool.
Doesn't necessarily have to be violence. There's a lot more hatred than that.
I just have one last question I just thought of. Just from speaking to you, you can tell you've got this kind of life philosophy that we've either uncovered or whatever that we talked about. It sounds like you've got a pretty like down pat, I guess you could say. You've got it written down in your head, so to speak. Would you say that, like, before you went to prison, you had any kind of life philosophy like written down, even if it was like a negative one? Were your thoughts and beliefs and your morals that clearly laid out in your head, or was it kind of all jumbled up?
At the time, I probably would have said that they were pretty clear, but in retrospect, they were quite jumbled up. I'm pretty sure that my main rules before I got arrested was like, life sucks, then you die, and probably just big into the chaos theory, Everything's going to go crazy, and then it's all going to explode was pretty much the way that I felt. I was really, really cynical because I was really into like physics and astronomy at the time, and I was like, well, eventually the gravitational pull of the universe is going to go too much this way. It's going to start to reverse on itself, crunch back in, and then it'll all start over again. So nothing matters at all. I don't have to get a job. I can sit here and drink alcohol and gripe about the state of the world all day long. I didn't see it as my responsibility to try and bring happiness to other people or try to make the world a better place than I left it behind, you know. Imagine if, like, the guys that invented electricity, imagine if Thomas Edison would have thought like that, you know, and then electricity wasn't invented for another. But you have to build a bridge to the future. Everything that we're doing right now, you know, this microphone that I'm using, these computers, they were all invented by many, many men building on the inventions of other people who all built a bridge towards the future. Try and make that bridge go a little faster is the way that I look at it now. Don't be a drain. Contribute.
Life might suck and we might all die in the end, but I mean, we might as well have some fun along the way, you know?
Absolutely. You have a very, very good time and try to leave it a little bit of a better place for other people. Have a fun time, you know?
Right.
Have a blast, and whatever happens after that happens. But at least you can say you didn't waste your time here, you know?
Right.
I love it. I absolutely love all your answers, Josh. I love listening to your like mind philosophy. I'm super glad I'm so thankful you were super open to speak about that. Twist, do you have any questions for Josh? Anything you can think of as we're kind of winding down here?
No, I think we pretty much covered most of it, you know?
Cool. I do have one chat question for you, Josh. This is from A-Tailed Dragon. He wants to know about your first night/week in prison and how you handled that.
Ooh, good question, Dylan. Well, jail was a little bit different than prison, of course. When I first got to jail, it was pretty laid back. Just a bunch of dudes that were in there for not paying their child support, et cetera, you know. It was pretty laid back. Everybody just playing cards. They taught me how to play spades, and I was so bad at it, they didn't let me play for like 2 weeks. But I became a master over time, though. I played a lot of spades. Prison, it was pretty scary, man. When I first got to prison, I was put into a cell with 2 black dudes. I was unaware of the fact that you're not supposed to tell the prison that you're okay with being in a cell with members outside of your race. So the white supremacists came and they were like, yo, we know you're not affiliated with us or nothing. You've obviously never been to prison. Pack up your stuff, man. We're going to put you over here with this Mexican and this Puerto Rican dude because white dudes don't sell with black dudes. And I was like, okay, you know, I don't want any trouble. It's whatever, man. Right. I'm not a white supremacist or an Aryan, so y'all aren't trying to recruit me or anything, right? They're like, no, you don't look the part anyways. And you know, they put me over here, this dude. But when that door locked at night, man, I was sitting here like, I am currently locked in a cell with 2 dudes that I've never met that are felons. They're serving many years in prison, have been locked up for a long time. Both of them have been to prison before. You know, they're both affiliated with gangs. And it was scary, man. At the same time, I never felt total discomfort around these guys. I actually got pretty close with the Puerto Rican guy. That whole first week, though, was basically me walking on my tiptoes, trying to learn how things work, trying to learn where we're supposed to sit, trying to learn where I don't sit, what TV I don't look at, you know, how the movements work, going to the rec yard. And thankfully, my first day in prison, I went out to the rec yard, checked out a guitar, and like 30 minutes later, I got invited into one of the bands. So that became my big focus. I was like, I'm just going to put everything. I'm going to spend every day playing guitar. I'm going to learn all these songs with this band. We're going to be awesome. We're going to be the best prison band that's ever been a band, and it's going to kick ass. And that's where all of my focus went and diverted a lot of my non-sensory into just focusing on guitar. I still did bad things like, you know, like I mentioned, I did drugs when I first got to prison. And instead of getting high and running around the unit and picking fights with people and acting like an idiot, I would get high and go play guitar. So music pretty much saved me my entire way through prison, particularly the first time. That's really about it. It was sketchy, but I just stayed out of the way. I kept my head down. I didn't pick any unnecessary fights, you know, and laugh with people, joke with people. I chat with the black dudes, I chat with the Mexicans, I chat with the white dudes. I didn't care. I'm not sitting where I'm not supposed to sit in the cafeteria. I'm minding my business, and here's my paperwork. I didn't tell on anybody, and I'm not a sex offender. Leave me alone. That was pretty much it. Cool. Then they go, wait a minute. What'd you do? You talked shit on a video game? No way, man. I got to tell my son about this. I'd be like, yeah, yuck it up. Real funny. Terrorist? You? You do kind of look like one, though. Never got old.
I love it. Javier Pons has a very simple question. He wants to know what amps are those behind you?
Dude, I can't even remember which one this is. It's a Valve State AVT 2000. That's what it is. My Marshall is a hybrid solid state tube amp. Takes a minute to warm up the distortion, but the rest of it is solid state. And I got a PVT 115 bass amp right there. I actually inherited that from my bass player that was in my band when I was in high school. He died of brain cancer when he was 18, and he left me that amp right there. So it hasn't really seen much use. And then over there on the ground, I got a Line 6 Spider 220 watt. Haven't been playing much guitar unless I'm streaming and they tell me to play a song. But I love that Marshall amp. I would highly recommend it. Sounds great with a Stratocaster. You turn that distortion on. It's some snarling Marshall, even though it's a hybrid. Sounds like a tube amp. It's glorious.
Cool. All right, guys. I think we're gonna tie up the stream here. Josh, any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say, clear up, or announce before we go?
2 things. Number 1, I'm innocent. I got it tattooed on my ribcage. Y'all can go look at my prison tattoos video if you want. I'm innocent. I was not gonna do what they said I was gonna do. And getting locked up, unfortunately, was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because here I am today. You know. Second of all, love being on the podcast, man. I've been blessed to meet you guys. It's been awesome. I really appreciate shooting the shit with you guys every week. I'm glad you're feeling better, Monkey. I got to go film my Let's Argue segment like on the right now. I'm about to go do that as soon as we get done.
Thanks, brother.
While I'm uploading the audio. Let's see. Yeah, I'm waiting to finish Ocarina 2, Javier. But it's been awesome, man. I'm really glad that I saw your post on the Reddit, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. I'll put it in. I was like, you know what I honestly thought? I was like, if the dude, whoever this is, has heard of my story, I think I've got a pretty good chance. I was actually getting my hair cut at the salon with my wife where she gets her hair done. And I was like, I'm signing up for this RuneScape podcast. And she was like, really? And I was like, maybe the dude's heard of me, you know? I was like, and then like 30 minutes later, you messaged me on Discord and you were like, is this really you? And I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Let's rock. Let's get started.
Well, I told you because I remember I was like, yeah, dude, you're totally invited. And you're like, really? I didn't think it'd be that easy. And I was like, yeah, I've watched your videos. I know you're incredibly well spoken and you're like, you're great. You have such a great energy about you. I was like, hell yeah. And then Twist wrote me like a 10-page book about RuneScape, and I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, let's get this guy on the show. He's a genius."
Yeah, I went a little bit overboard.
It's perfect, man.
Away, bro. I loved it, bro.
We've got the trifecta because I'm not good at hosting things and doing social media stuff, as anybody will tell you. I can't even remember to check my DMs half the time on any platform at all. And then we got, the solid logic and deep game knowledge from Twist. I think we got a pretty good trifecta here.
Yeah, I think my goal has always been for RuneScape at least to be like the human rune wiki kind of, just because I've spent so much time on there, right? And I've spent so much time playing this game, so I might not be that.
I made an Iron Man.
Yeah, I might not be that good at the game, but I know a decent amount.
At least we know enough.
That's actually a question I wanted to ask you, Josh, and I wrote it down. I'm looking at it. I completely forgot it. How did you find my post? Were you just on r/new on Old School on the gosh dang it? Were you sorting by new
on the 2007
RuneScape Reddit?
Nah, I was just deep in there.
Just deep. Oh,
like
cool.
I mean, my wife was getting her hair dyed because we were at the salon, so I was like 7,000 scrolls down the page, because it didn't have a lot of upvotes.
Yeah.
But when I saw it, it had not even been long enough for the upvotes to show, even if it did have some. Now that I think about it, if it's less than an hour, the upvotes don't show yet.
Right.
And I was like, this is cool. I thought about doing some kind of a podcast, and obviously I'm not trying to be the producer because I'm bad at that kind of stuff. Right, I was like, if I can just jump on and be a talking head, that'd be, ideal. And then I clicked on it, filled out the form. I was like, all right, let's do it. And then like 30 minutes later, you messaged me on Discord, and I was like, I was expecting you to, accept me. I was hoping, but I was thinking there'd be some more grilling at least, But luckily, it worked out in the end. And thankfully, I checked my Discord 7 minutes before it was time to start the show. And now I'm about to film my Let's Argue, and I apologize for that being late.
It's all good, man. Don't worry. I've been, honestly, I'm sure, actually, no, I've actually been feeling kind of sick. It's not COVID, thank God. I get sick a lot. COVID. It sucks. I get sick. I've had strep throat like 3 times in the past 4 months. I've got a week of immune system, so I get sick a lot. So it sucks. When I get sick, it takes me forever to get back. So it's no big deal. I haven't even started editing it. So, all right, guys, we're going to cut it out here. Unless, Twist, you got any final thoughts for us?
No, I think we covered most of it.
Right on. Very cool. Very cool. Guys, make sure you check out Josh. He's got fantastic YouTube videos. I'm going to link those. I'm going to link his channel and those videos I talked about earlier. If you don't know Josh's full story, he has 2 great videos where he explains it extremely well. Guys, make sure you follow him on Twitch. He's a full-time Twitch streamer. He makes YouTube videos. It's at Josh Pillault, J Pillault. It's all under that Pillault. Just search Pillault, and you will find him.
You'll find it on any platform. That's a unique last name.
Exactly. Great branding. Oh, actually, here's a question. Why didn't you go with RS Felon for your branding? You switched.
Didn't come up with that until after I'd already made accounts for everything. Oh. My RuneScape main account, the RS Felon, was originally named Josh Pillault. I did that as a joke, and then I was getting recognized all over the place in the game when I was home on house arrest in 2017. At that point, once people started recognizing me and I realized that it was legit, like I was like, I don't really want that to be my name. I was being a smart ass doing that, I was just being goofy. At which point I came up with the RuneScape Felon.
Cool.
I didn't know I was going to be a Twitch streamer when I made a Twitch. I don't know if you guys, I would assume as long as you guys have been playing, you've heard of Silent Core.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did a video with him. That's what started everything for me. And he's the one who told me, he's like, you got to get on Twitch, man. You got to make a Twitch. Check it out, man. So I just named it J Pillault, never knowing I was going to stream.
Cool.
I just did that so that if I talked to people, they would know it was me. And I could be like, yeah, it's really me. Look, I put the name on my YouTube profile. And then when I started streaming, I was like, well, this sucks. Nobody can spell my last name.
All right, guys. For real this time, I know I've said it 3-4 times now, but we're actually going to wrap up the show here. I want to appreciate everybody coming in. With me always is the Felon, Josh Pillault. We called him out. Tiny Twist. He's at Tiny Twist. Guys, everybody, like always, please spam in the chat, in the comments. Tell Tiny Twist to stream. He's incredibly knowledgeable and he'd be great. I'm your host at Monkey Commando. Check me out on Twitter. I'm always posting crazy stuff. Well, not really, but just whatever Twitter allows me to post. Whatever you're watching on, because we do upload to all streaming services like Spotify, Amazon podcasts, like everything. I can't even think of them all.
Stitcher,
yes, thank you.
I don't even know what that is, but I've heard you say it.
Everything you can listen to this podcast on, we upload on. We upload to YouTube. Guys, check out our Let's Argues, our highlight videos, all that good stuff. Please like, follow, and subscribe. It helps us grow the channel. I appreciate everybody for coming on. Hope you enjoyed the show. All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll check you next time.